Bobby Fi here, starting early a little bit today. Going to talk through a little bit about what I like about this slate, and please, like and subscribe and all that jazz, and we'll just get right into it. I've got a few plans tonight, so I'm trying to get this stuff done early. And fortunately, there shouldn't be a whole lot of changes. We still don't have a few lineups, but we'll get to that, I think, in a little bit. One of the big ones being the Phillies, obviously, but we'll see. We should have it pretty soon. So here's what I'm going to start with. Let's start with pitching, which I feel conflicted on. I have not felt good about this pitching all day. And I feel a little bit ambivalent, like a little nervous with almost everybody here. So just tell you what I'm doing as of right now. I have a little bit, probably too much of the chalk. My highest owned pitchers are Gallen, Verlander, Scott. I am playing a good amount of Logan Allen to get different. I am playing a good amount of Christopher Sanchez. I have a little bit of Sandoval, and I'll be like double the field. No, actually be higher. I've got almost 20% of Imanaga. So that's what I'm doing. I actually did throw Corbin Burns into a couple lineups as well. That game's weather is still a little bit iffy, but I think it's good enough to where I'm going to take that chance. And I want to point out also the St. Louis-Chicago game is in real danger. I didn't like anything in this game anyway, other than Imanaga, but I'm going to – that's why, again, I have him in my small buy-in, large field stuff. That's pretty much all I'm going to do with the Imanaga play, just because I'm worried about the weather. And if it looks any worse, I'm probably just going to even peel off of that. So definitely a weird slate with pitching. I think it's totally fine to go off the board and play guys like Rodon. Braxton Garrett would be another one I'd consider. I mentioned Logan Allen, who I am playing. Kyle Harrison would be another one you could consider to get off the board, but I just didn't get to enough lineups to where I got to those guys. All right, let's talk about positions, and I'll just say who I've got the most. Well, before we do that, I'll get into stacks. So I'm stacking. I mean, look, it is pretty much the chalkier side to stack things, but you look at Goldie's ownership here, and the Dodgers are just low enough to where I feel comfortable using them. So Dodgers, Phillies, and Boston on the high end. On the most exposure end and on the chalky end. But Philly, I'm keeping it to 4 or less, so they're mostly going to be a complementary stack. So it's mostly Dodgers, Boston, and then I have Minnesota as my other team that I'm using today. I think Minnesota is a good sneaky stack against Urena. He's got a wide range of outcomes that are Urena for sure. This stack, they haven't hit well enough to where they're too expensive yet, so we've got some cheap options. No Jeffers makes it a worse lineup, but also does allow more value. So I went with Minnesota as the other team I would stack. If I had to pick a fifth team, which I don't, it probably would be somewhere between Houston and Arizona, but I just didn't end up getting to it. I do think the Houston thing is a little bit interesting. I sort of expected them to pick up traction as the day went on, and they really haven't. It's not a great hitter's park. Obviously, it's a downgrade there, but these guys, I mean, it's a powerful lineup. They're expensive. It's hard to play them because the Dodgers and Phillies and everybody else looks so good. But that's an interesting get different one, which doesn't seem like on most slates. I think Houston would have ended up being chalky here, but we have the Coors game with the Phillies there. We have the Dodgers in Cincinnati, and we've got Boston in a good weather game at home and a good matchup. So that's the only reason why I didn't get to them. But if I played more lineups, Houston would be probably the other one I get in along with Arizona a little bit. So pop in questions, pop in thoughts whenever you want to. What's up to my man K9? Good to see you in here, buddy. I didn't get to any FanDuel builds myself today, but I can pretty safely say that I would be doing the same thing. And I think I would be willing to spend up at pitcher for a Gallen and play for the upside. I also mentioned the Yu Darvish thing. I'm going to play some Yu Darvish, and I forgot to put him in my early build. So I'm going to make a note here and make sure I get a little Yu Darvish once we get out of here. That's what I like anyway. So let's get to some specifics. Catcher, mostly taken up by Connor Wong, Will Smith, and Rio Muto for me. If you're going to look for those are my main ones, and obviously fairly chalky. But if you're going to look for some sort of value at Vasquez, I'll use in Minnesota stacks, and that's really most of where I want to go. I don't really love these other ones. Patrick Bailey is an interesting one you could take a shot on, but I don't really love this. I guess Gabriel Moreno in Arizona stacks. And then Yainer Diaz in Houston stacks. But I don't really feel like I want to get way off the board with this. There's a few really good catching options. I like all of them very much. So I'm going to stick with those 3 as my main ones. First base, let's get over there. So first base is going to be pretty basic for me. Dom Smith obviously rates very highly. I like Dom Smith. I like the value. I need the value with some of my builds. And Ohtani is my other highest owned one. Not a shocker there. What I did to do different, though, is like to play the Dodgers stack. You can find different. This is something I used to be good at, like that I would consistently stack the top teams and either do 4-2-2s, 4-3-1s, whatever, or find different ways to get, different within the stack. I don't buy that Freddie Freeman and Ohtani, that Freddie Freeman's going to be double-digit owned. I think he's going to be like 4 or 5% owned. That's my guess. So I think playing Freeman and Ohtani with bets, if you can. Now, obviously, you have to sacrifice some other positions, but you've got Chris Taylor to balance it out with the 2,100 in the outfield spot. So I think that's a very reasonable build to go with. And speaking of which, I know I was going to get into Gavin Lux in a minute anyway. I still believe in Gavin Lux and the talent. I know other people don't very much. I am still going to play him batting 6th in the Dodger lineup for 3K. Again, the other value piece that makes a lot of sense. Just grabbing my other exposures. Vaughn Grissom, David Hamilton being the other two that I own the most. And I understand the Witt thing, but, batting 8th, if you wanted to spend that much, I think you might be better off just playing Marte, Westberg, if you're not worried about that game. And by the way, Baltimore, if you're not worried about that game, stack some Baltimore. That's the you stack and you pray it plays. I think that's a very reasonable route. And where I have Burns, I will have Baltimore pieces or stacks. I actually think that's another note I'm going to make to myself here. Get to some Baltimore, just because that game is looking. If it's okay enough, that's a pretty good spot for Baltimore to be in against Flexen in a terrible bullpen. I know that the numbers, they're bad still, but it's just terrible teams. You have a chance to, potentially get position players playing, throwing out there. It happens. We've seen it happen. All right. Third base, mostly Devers, Espinal. Espinal is really just because of the value. You look here, like we don't really have like that much value. I couldn't get to Vientos in a couple lineups, so I played Espinal instead. I think it's totally fine. Other than that, I personally I think Miranda in Minnesota stacks, but I'm not crazy about this position either. Bohm's going to be crazy popular at 6,100 or popular at 6,100. Westberg, if you're playing the Orioles stacks, yeah. And Devers is a great play, but because of his price compared with the other high spend ups, he's going to be a little bit under-owned tonight. So Devers would be the one I got the most of, and that's the reasoning why. Shortstop, for me, it's Mookie number 1, David Hamilton number 2, and after that, it's a combination of Sosa and Rafaela, just to get a little different on the Boston stacks. Well, not different, but just get different exposures to Hamilton and Rafaela. I think they're both reasonable. Getting to the outfield, my most owned player is Chris Taylor, just because I have the Dodgers stacks, and his 2,100 makes it work regardless of how you try to stack them. So mini stack, full stack, I'm totally cool with Chris Taylor. I don't believe Chris Taylor and Gavin Lux just will stop hitting forever. Maybe Chris Taylor has hit that point. I don't know. I've seen this before with him so many times. Then he hits this ridiculous hot streak coming into the summers. I'm going to keep playing it. Other than the Dodgers, Taylor, Ohtani as my 2 most popular. Abreu, Castellanos, Schwarber, Larnach, Buxton, Teoscar Hernandez, Austin Hayes. And Austin Hayes will be in the Burns lineups, assuming that, presuming that game plays. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to jump over to basketball unless anybody has any questions or thoughts. I'm not going to run a build or do anything like that unless anybody has a request for a certain thing. But I will go over to basketball, and I'm going to be editing by hand, which, again, I almost nailed it last night. And it was one of my hand edits that almost did it. I just needed – I needed 5 less fantasy points for Jaylen Brown, and I needed 5 more for Drew Holiday, because I had obviously both of them in the lineup, but I had Holiday as the captain, and it just barely fit. I would have had I think it was a 10 to 15 person chop, so that would have been that. What's up to my man MJ? Good to see you in chat, buddy. Remember, please guys, like and subscribe. I'm going to talk through this. Before I talk through it, I'll show you what Saber Sim. So I did put some minimum max exposure. So I like to get a little more high variance with my captains, especially in a game that I think has a chance to be a Minnesota blowout. I just feel this Minnesota 25-point win. maybe even more. Let's just say it gets even a little bit out of hand. It's a good time for Denver. Give Luka a little bit of a break. He's still hobbled up with the knees. So I'm mostly leaning on Naz Reid, Karl Anthony Towns. I think Jaden Hardy, and then you get everything else, is a really interesting way to go, and no one's going to do it. Projected for 9 fantasy points, but we know he's got upside, and they've let him have some real minutes in this series. Now, he could also get minutes if they're getting blown out and be the guy who tries to bring them back. There's just a lot of ways it could work out. Also, Hardy does allow you to get Edwards, Luka, Cat, and what's his name together, Kyrie. So you can do a lot of weird things with the Naz Reid. Power, you're talking about a different NBA slate. I don't know what you're talking about, man. I'm not going to speculate on slates in the future. There's just no reason for me. But yeah, obviously McConnell's going to be 90% owned. It's not like it's not like you're the play when you're like 95% owned. And probably going to be the most popular captain unless they change his price. They could make him like 10K or 11K. Then I think you have a decision to make. But if they don't, I don't agree. I actually, and also we've seen Nembhard put up he had some games with Halliburton now where he put up over 60. So I obviously McConnell, but that's like saying oh, well, if Cat gets hurt tonight, Naz Reid is a great play. Or if Gobert is out, Naz Reid is yeah, of course, we know that. All right. So moving over to what I'm doing here, the Kyle Anderson. They do have the two. Oh, okay, fair enough, Power. I'm not paying attention to the two gamers, so fair enough. My bad. I just don't personally. I don't even know what McConnell's price is, so I haven't looked at the two gamer. I don't like the two gamer 2 days things, especially when the tournament pools are like I don't know what the 555 when I looked at it was, but it felt like it was like 10,000, maybe it was 20. But it just feels like a lot. Like and I don't know. Personally, I'm not doing it right now. I might reconsider next week, but I appreciate that, Power. Sorry about that. My bad. All right. So on to the other ones. Again, Kyle Anderson for a similar reason as the Naz Reid. Maybe the second unit gets it done, gets extra run. Anderson was great in the first game. Again, allows you to get everything else. Derek Lively. Again, I'm okay with all of these ownerships. I did want to get a little bit of exposure to these four, just because none of them I was going to be able to get 5% and be above the field. And I'm still planning on doing that. Remo all in on the Minnesota win tonight. I don't like Minnesota for what it's worth. I like their stack. I don't like them to necessarily win the game. But they might. Yeah, sure. I like their stack, but I also feel like I don't think that Texas is any easy thing for a above average right-hander against Texas. We've seen Texas put up just a million runs against these guys, and they've been worse this year in all fairness. But I'm not there personally. Wait, who only lost last night by 1 basket? Oh, Minnesota. I think Minnesota. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Oh, so you're with Minnesota. Okay, I'm so sorry, Remo. I'm going back and forth between baseball. So yes, in basketball, I'm in on Minnesota. So you wrote Ober, and I thought you were talking about Ober. No, you did nothing wrong, Remo. You see what I'm saying though? Because Bailey Ober is pitching for Minnesota Twins, and you said I'm Ober. I'm all in. I'm all Ober. So I thought you were saying you were all in on Ober and the Minnesota. That's very funny. You meant the other Minnesota side of it. It's so funny. It's totally no, not your bad at all. It's literally just a funny coincidence that a typo happened to be a pitcher's name for the same city that you're talking about. It's just a bizarre coincidence. Not your bad at all, my friend. Always good to see you in here, Remo. We miss you. All right, so that's sort of like what it gave me. I'm gonna probably even tighten it up more. Probably even end up with like just 1 or 2 Luka captains lineups, and I probably will throw a Kyrie lineup in instead. I also probably only end up with probably 2 or 3 from Anth. And then I do like the Hardy idea. It might be reaching, but I kind of want to play these speculative things. It's worked out really well in the past, and I'm just going to keep rolling with it. That's funny, Remo. You know what? Maybe take it as an omen. Maybe take the Ober comment as an omen. Maybe you should be playing Minnesota. Maybe you should parlay a Minnesota wins both tonight. That's something to do. That's funny, Cam. I appreciate that. I love Chapman, by the way. It's just, and by the way, I don't love third base. So if you want to just plug in a thing, go ahead, play Chapman. I'm in with you on that one. I've always felt like Chapman is a better hitter than he's turned out to be, but also he's moved around. I just think get him on Bring him to we'll take him on the Dodgers. Just give us another bat. And give him some good hitting coaches, or send him to the Yankees or something. Just doesn't even matter if the position's already filled. Just find a place for this guy, because I really think Matt Chapman should be a great hitter. I really thought he was the next Donaldson. I really did, and I'm not willing to sell that out. I mean the good version of Donaldson, not the recent years like we thought. Yeah, no, I hear you on that one, Remo. It's funny because now I'm in on it. Now it's like, because it happened by accident, I'm kind of like, maybe that's the thing to do. So anyway, this is the things I got to in my builds. I was, as you guys know, I posted my things. I was very into Kyle Anderson last time, and I loved the, what was he? He ended up between 9 and 11% owned depending on the tournament. But I'm again, I'll be overweight him again. I think I have too much Luka and Edwards. Now, usually you wouldn't have too much for these guys. The problem is I think a blowout could really happen tonight. I really do. And look, there's a really good chance it doesn't. But is Luka going to go out there and grind his ass off unless it's a really tight game? Because his knees are bothering him. It's no question about it. They're clearly bothering him. Minnesota should have won the first game anyway. Luka was incredible down the stretch. And maybe it's not that I'm underrating Dallas. I think it's a 7-game series. I said it from the beginning. I liked Minnesota. I'm still fine with the Minnesota pick. And I'm a little worried. I'm still a little worried because having Luka and Kyrie is, in general, the rule of the playoffs is the team with the best players tend to win, especially as the series get longer. Now, it didn't happen in the last series with Jokic. But with Luka, I don't know, man. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be tough either way. Either way, I just wanted to point out that I think I might go a little bit lower on this. The only reason I'm getting so much is because I'm taking those weird wild cards as captains. But I like that too, because then you still would want the raw points. So I'm sort of in between on what I'm doing there exactly. I think I should probably get to a little bit more Towns. I don't expect him to have another game like he did the other night again. So I just want to throw that out there. And then you see where the exposures went elsewhere. I'd like to get more PJ Washington. I just wanted to make sure I had some exposure to Monty Morris and Dante Exum. I think that you see changes in game 2, and there's always foul trouble. And Exum got off the bench earlier, was off the bench before Hardaway in the last games, as was Hardy. I think it was Hardy then Hardaway. But I'm still not giving up that there's an outside chance it could happen. This is the one that's freaking me out. I don't know why they gave me this. So I have a note to myself, and I'm just going to highlight it real quick. Big, 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 bold. McDaniels has to be in more of your builds. I think we're seeing, in addition to McDaniels, and by the way, he's probably going to get in foul trouble tonight or whatever anyway, but in addition to McDaniels just being like a really great defender, I think he might be finding his path to being like an actual two-way player. I don't mean just because he hits some open threes. He has moves. They look for him like on cuts, and he does a lot of things really well, he doesn't like handle the basketball. I think that we should get some exposure there. At least that's where I'm at. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. So I hate the pitching on this slate. So I feel like everything I say is wrong. The Verlander thing feels suspect to me, but I'm using it in my biggest buy-in. So I would be foolish to say it's not wrong. And Sanchez is my second biggest buy-in currently. So yes, I like that for single entry. It's not, I don't love it. But I don't love any of it. So that's where I'm stuck. But yeah, that's essentially a lineup that I would throw out there in a single entry. Yes. Minnesota in 6, but like both teams, oh, Remo, I like that. Minnesota getting the win on the road to take it down. That would be cool. So weird because you never consider Fairchild leading off in the stadium too. I play Fairchild a bunch, but I think so is everybody else. I think Fairchild is going to be one of the popular value spots. He and Espinal sort of make lineups work if you want to still target that game. And I like Paxton as a pitcher, but it's not a guy I'm not willing to take plenty of bats against. So that's it. All right, guys, I'm seeing if there's anything else here before I get out of here, because we started early, as you guys know, a little bit today. I'm trying to figure something out here, and that's the other thing that's weirding me out is why did I not get to any Mike Conley whatsoever? Okay, so I'll get a little bit of Conley, but a lot of McDaniels, a little Conley is what I'm going to be changing, and then I'm going to be, figuring and mixing, matching some pieces. I really like this Jaden Hardy play, as you guys can tell. And again, it's not going to work every time. Get some exposure to the other ones as well. Get some exposure to Hardaway Jr. Get some exposure to Dante Exum. But I do think Hardy does seem like the guy. And also, he fits the blowout narrative. He's going to be on the court trying to bring them back, and then that's it. trying to bring them back, and then maybe even playing some of the blowout run if there is blowout run. That's just my take tonight. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. I like Minnesota minus the points. I like Minnesota to win handily. That's just the way I see this happening, and I really feel pretty good about it. The most I've felt about it since, I would say, Minnesota Game 6 against Denver. That felt like when I was, or no, Minnesota, not what's the game? Yeah, Game 6 against Denver, where they blew them out. That was one where I was like, they're not letting that one go. that was one I had a strong feeling on. That was a 40. So this is the strongest feeling I've had since then. Both times with Minnesota. And we'll see what happens. Oh, and I felt like that about the Celtics last night. Although the game was actually a little closer than I thought it would be. Man, the Celtics, I tell you what, when I watch the Celtics play, what it reminds me? I think Drew Holiday is he's like the perfect guard. He just does everything I want. You know what I mean? He's the best. I still believe that I would rather have him as a perimeter defender. Maybe you could argue Jaden McDaniels, Jalen Suggs as a younger version. But Drew Holiday can guard one, and he sometimes guards the 5. Like he guards tough ones too. Like he was guarding KD when they played them in the series. Like he's so good, man. He's so good. He's the guy who I'm continually the most impressed with on the Celtics roster, because a lot of things that are great in basketball don't show up in stat sheets, and he does all of it. And then on top of it, he can go ahead and score and get the assists and do all that when he needs to. He just is never needs to be the guy. I know that from watching him at UCLA. And people are like, why is this guy who averages like 8 points and 5 rebounds going to be a lottery pick in the NBA? I'm like, people just don't watch this guy play. He's so freaking good. So I guess a little pat on the back to myself for recognizing that a long time ago, but I didn't mean, it wasn't about me. It was about Drew. Drew is just an awesome basketball player, and certainly wouldn't surprise me if that's, and I think he'll be a huge part of the reason, if not honestly, the same Celtics team really. I really think that he's as important to them as I think he's more important than Porzingis and those guys, even though they definitely need Porzingis right now because their front line was built really poorly. A little surprised that they didn't use Tillman a little bit more. I know Cornette hurt his hand last night, and I actually like Cornette just fine, but yeah, he's a third string player. I think Tillman is a legitimate backup center. Anyway. Yeah, exactly, Remo. You see him what he does. He'll go out there and he'll post you up guys who are 6 inches taller than he is, and he'll just beat the hell out of you down there. I really like it. Again, obviously Kyrie's a much more skilled offensive player, but it's like when Kyrie does the post ups, I don't remember seeing so many small guards post up so effectively. Kyrie does it in a more skillful, artsy way. Drew will just back you down. He'll beat you up, and he is so strong, and he just plays really great basketball. So absolute basketball crush on Drew Holiday. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. It's Friday. Enjoy Friday. Enjoy the Memorial Day weekend. There'll be things in and out throughout the week. We got Brandon coming up with a show shortly. My kid just flew to Japan. I just got a message from him, so I can't wait to go see that, because you always get nervous when they're trying. I was very nervous yesterday, and got the message in the middle of the night that he got there, but it means he's awake. So I'm gonna reach out to my kid. Then I'm gonna go to a concert tonight. I don't know what year it is, but for some reason we're seeing Queens of the Stone Age, because I live in Santa Barbara, and it's a great setting. I don't have any feelings about Queens of the Stone Age. It's just worth it to go to any show. So just remember that if you're ever in the West Coast, if you have a chance to go to the bowl, Santa Barbara Bowl, that is, check it out, and the Hollywood Bowl too, for that matter. But Santa Barbara Bowl is a little bit easier to get in and out of than the Hollywood Bowl, which takes 2 hours to get in and out of. Anyway, off on a tangent. Good luck to everybody. I hope you all crush it, and we'll see you at the top of the leaderboards.